creature's call. Whispers from the eternal void.
Sealed transmission begins. Vox Seal. Tertius 7. Authentication. Cipher Omega Black. Sergeant Cale Severin. 73rd Cadian Shock. Designation Sevi 17. Reporting to Ordo Xenos under After-Action Protocol. Classification. Sealed until exterminatus or containment breach. On Ossuary Prime, 17 guardsmen drowned standing upright in bone-dry air, their lungs filled with dust that moved like deep ocean currents when the liturgical frequencies played. I witnessed this impossibility at dawn during morning prayers, watched Trooper Voss collapse, gasping as particulate matter poured through his rebreather seals like pressurized water, while atmospheric readings showed 0% humidity. Forward Operating Base. Sanctum sits anchored into a ridge of crystallized bone meal on this cemetery world, where the ash of 10 billion Imperial martyrs creates vast, shifting dunes that mock the Emperor's natural order. The morning I began this record, the ash sea stretched to the horizon in perfect hexagonal patterns, each geometric formation roughly 17 meters across, creating tessellations that hurt to observe for extended periods. The air tastes of bone meal and frostburn, carrying temperatures that drop without warning, leaving moisture traces on our ceramite, despite readings that insist the atmosphere contains less water than deep void. When wind picks up, the ash hisses against our armor plating like surf, breaking on distant shores, a sound that shouldn't exist in this desiccated wasteland. 3 squads vanished during routine patrol operations. Alpha Squad under Sergeant Hadrian, Beta Squad with Corporal Mark, and Gamma Squad led by Lieutenant Vex, fresh from Scola Progenium. Standard reconnaissance sweep of grid sectors 7 through 17, checking shrine markers for heretical activity. They maintained Vox contact for 6 hours, reporting normal atmospheric conditions. Then Hadrian transmitted something that echoes in my skull. Base command, ash moving wrong, flowing uphill toward shrines. Trooper stepped in solid ground, sank to waste. Dust acting like liquid, but instruments read bone dry. Final transmission logged at hour 17 of watch cycle, 17 hours ago. Our atmospheric processors began clogging at 0400 hours. Intake filters packed with ash, exhibiting impossible humidity readings on Mechanicus sensors. Tech Adept Sigma reported particulate matter showing non-standard gravitational response and anomalous surface tension characteristics. The Blessed Martyr's remains, sanctified by 10 millennia of prayer and ritual, were defying fundamental laws of matter and motion. When I ordered emergency filter replacement, extracted material felt damp, despite every instrument insisting otherwise. The processors wheeze like drowning men, struggling against ash that behaves as both solid and liquid. Base Commissar Mordian issued containment protocols at dawn, sealing external vents and switching to emergency atmospheric reserves. Estimated supply duration, 72 hours before carbon dioxide poisoning becomes critical. Orders received via astropathic relay. Specify holding position until inquisitorial support arrives, maintaining operational security, documenting anomalous phenomena for Ordo Xenos analysis. Standard Imperial Guard doctrine for xenological contamination events. What orders didn't mention was maintaining morale when ash sings back during prayers. It started as whispers during morning litany. Chaplain was leading devotionals when ash dunes beyond perimeter began producing harmonics, low-frequency vibrations responding to our cadences. Blessed be the seal of martyrs, we recited, and ash patterns shifted, hexagonal formations collapsing and reforming in synchronization with our voices. Sound was almost musical, like distant organ pipes played by invisible congregations. Younger troopers found it soothing. I found it terrifying. The phrase haunts daily routines now, appearing in 17 different locations throughout the base, scratched into bulkhead plating, etched on ammunition cases, carved into entrenching tool handles. Temperature drops occur without atmospheric cause, sudden chills penetrating thermal-regulated armor, leaving condensation on visors despite arid conditions. Cold feels wet, like standing in freezing rain, but instruments detect no atmospheric moisture. During episodes, ash dunes glow faintly in pre-dawn darkness, phosphorescent patterns pulsing in 17-beat rhythms. Medical scans show elevated stress hormones among all personnel, but no chemical contamination signs. The men ask if dead hear us. I tell them yes because faith requires reply, no because duty requires silence. Walking perimeter at night, I count 17 fresh nicks scored into picket posts, shallow white marks against rusted red metal. In dust are hexagons, always hexagons, fields like scales on buried beasts. When wind stops, I hear the base breathe, ash against armor, ash against ash. My palate gums with grit. Men rub oil on gloves to prevent cracking. Oil turns cloudy as if water bled into it. Medikey says stress creates phantom humidity, but we watch drips emerge from bulkhead seams, fall, leave dust rings where they land. Drips are dust behaving like water, then sifting apart. At dusk I positioned squad at parade square edge, ordered silence. We listened. Ash moved with memory of tides, pulling around greaves then receding like reversed breathing. When priest began whispered blessing, ash lifted in gentle threads toward his lips. I stopped him. Blessed be the seal of martyrs, I whispered, and threads relaxed. The ash remembers drowning. It wants to teach us. Now Vox crackles with cipher unheard since Kasser training halls, tone that pins ears. Inquisitorial grade, stamped with holy sigils. Transmission reads, Resonance Protocol 17. Orders, locate ossuary engine before next tide cycle. Seismic traces show heartbeat. Under Ash C, amplitude rising toward sanctum. Through observation ports, hexagonal patterns dissolve into wave-like formations, reflecting starlight like dark ocean surface. Ash Sea breathes, rising and falling in measured intervals matching human respiration. 17 breaths per minute. Combat stress rate. The tide is coming home. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7 authenticated. Recon Squad. Mortis advanced through ash drifts at 0800 hours, each step sending slow ripples through particulate matter that behaved like viscous liquid despite atmospheric readings of 0% humidity. The shrine of Saint Ossian emerged from flowing white dunes like a drowning cathedral, Gothic spires and carved aquila barely visible beneath accumulating martyrs' remains. Temperature dropped without atmospheric cause, leaving phantom moisture on our visors while instruments insisted the air contained less water than deep void. The ash hissed against ceramite plating like surf breaking on distant shores, creating harmonics that resonated through our armor with frequencies below human hearing threshold. Confessor Hadrian led devotionals as we established breach perimeter, his voice carrying ritual cadence required for toxic environment operations. Blessed be the seal, blessed be the tomb, blessed be the silence of the martyred. We recited in measured intervals, 17 heartbeats between each clause. Words created visible disturbances in ash around our boots, sound waves propagating through impossible medium that flowed in hexagonal patterns roughly 17 meters across. The shrine's sealed doors bore Mechanicus authentication locks, 17 hexagonal seals arranged around central death mask relief. Each required specific acoustic frequencies to disengage, tones Hadrian provided through liturgical chanting, while I maintained particulate density protocols on my auspex. When final seal disengaged with pneumatic hiss, ash poured through the gap like pressurized liquid seeking equilibrium. Inside, the shrine's nave stretched into shadow-draped vastness. pillars carved with saints' faces disappearing into ash currents that flowed in slow spirals around stone effigies. The martyrs' statues wept white tears, particulate matter streaming from carved eye sockets and pooling around marble pedestals in perfect geometric formations. Hexagonal floor tiles lay beneath ankle-deep ash, their sacred tessellations creating navigation patterns that guided flow in predetermined channels. Air tasted of sanctified bone meal and ozone, carrying harmonics like distant organ music played in subsonic frequencies. Trooper Vex maintained point position, auspex sweeping for structural hazards as we advanced through the nave's central corridor. Ash moved around his boots in eddies and currents, responding to electromagnetic emissions with liquid behavior that defied known particulate physics. During routine equipment check, he accidentally triggered his Voxhaler's frequency sweep. The high-pitched whine resonated through the chamber, and ash around his position immediately liquefied, surface tension collapsing as he sank ankle-deep into what moments before had been solid ground. Emergency extraction required 3 men pulling while he fought suction that felt like drowning in reverse, white streams flowing up his legs with predatory intent. Confessor Hadrian attempted stabilization through increased liturgical volume, raising his voice in benedictions that had calmed ash storms during approach march. In nomine imperator, blessed be the seal of martyrs eternal, he intoned, words carrying across acoustic chambers with cathedral resonance. The ash responded by flowing toward his mouth like tide seeking harbor, white streams converging from all directions to pour between his lips in impossible defiance of gravity. He remained standing as particulate matter filled his throat, eyes wide with recognition as martyrs' remains chose him for communion. Death took 17 seconds by chronometer as he drowned in blessed dust while his feet never left solid ground. Medical examination revealed lungs packed with crystalline ash, exhibiting organized structure, particles arranged in hexagonal lattices mimicking alveolar architecture. Medixia reported anomalous post-mortem respiratory activity, chest continuing to rise and fall for 3 minutes after cardiac arrest, as if ash attempted, maintaining respiratory function through mechanical replacement of biological processes. Temperature readings around the corpse showed localized cooling, heat drawn away by invisible processes that left frost patterns on ceramite despite ambient warmth. Technical analysis revealed particulate composition matching sanctified human remains, but exhibiting non-standard gravitational response to acoustic frequencies in 17 kHz range. Martyrdom resonance frequencies, according to Shrine Archives, were designed to create spiritual harmony between living and blessed dead. System appeared functioning beyond design parameters, creating sympathetic resonance between living vocal cords and crystallized bone matter comprising the ash sea. Throughout the shrine, motif patterns showed consistent mathematical relationships. Hexagonal floor tiles arranged in groups of 17, tally marks scratched into wall reliefs in 17-count sequences, devotional candles positioned at 17-degree intervals around altar arrangements. In the eastern transept, we discovered a cracked servo skull bearing Mechanicus sigils and etched designation 17/7, optical sensors dark but Vox grill, crackling with binary cant fragments. Data port access revealed corrupted files referencing Ossuary Engine 17 and Choir Servitor requirements before system failure. Priority transmission interrupted investigation. Sanctum base to Mortis squad, maintain Vox discipline. Atmospheric disturbance increasing. Seismic activity showing coordinated patterns across 17-kilometer radius. I acknowledged and ordered communications blackout, switching to hand signals to prevent further acoustic contamination. The shrine's atmosphere felt increasingly oppressive, humidity readings climbing despite arid conditions, condensation forming on weapon barrels and optical equipment. As we silenced all communications equipment, a distant sound grew audible through ancient walls, deep and rhythmic, like vast breathing or measured heartbeat of something impossibly large buried beneath the ash sea. The sound synchronized with seismic tremors, causing ash drifts to pulse in coordinated waves, 17 beats per minute, matching combat stress respiratory patterns. Through foundation cracks, pale light pulsed in rhythm, and I realized we stood atop something vast and alive, breathing with collected breath of 10 billion martyrs. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal, Tertius 7, authenticated. Absolute communications blackout initiated at 0915 hours as Squad Mortis navigated ash trenches between Shrine of St. Ossian and base perimeter under modified tactical doctrine. Movement discipline required 17-meter intervals maintained through hand signal protocols, each trooper positioned to prevent sympathetic resonance cascade events while advancing through channels carved by impossible tidal forces. The ash whispered against ceramite greaves with sounds like surf, breaking inside a skull, harmonics that resonated through armor plating into bone marrow, with frequencies matching cardiac stress patterns. Temperature fluctuations created phantom humidity. Despite atmospheric readings showing absolute desiccation, condensation forming on weapon barrels, while instruments insisted no moisture existed in the electric-tasting recycled air. Technical analysis revealed fundamental rule changes in particulate behavior beyond acoustic frequency response. The martyr's ash now responded to electromagnetic signatures from sealed breathing apparatus, creating visible plumes when exhalation occurred through standard rebreather systems. These plumes defied natural convection, forming helical structures that curved back toward air intake ports, like seeking tendrils attempting reconnection with respiratory systems. Munitorum Protocol 7.17 on respiratory hygiene in hostile particulate environments became emergency survival doctrine, requiring controlled breathing patterns and modified filtration procedures to prevent ash infiltration through microscopic seal failures. Each breath created ripple patterns in surrounding ash, sound waves propagating through medium that exhibited liquid properties while maintaining granular composition. Sharp sensory interruptions punctuated our technical navigation procedures. When Trooper Vex's breathing apparatus released pressure through automatic valve cycling, ash around his position immediately liquefied, surface tension collapsing as white streams flowed toward the mechanical hiss with predatory intent. The electric taste of recycled air carried metallic overtones, suggesting atmospheric contamination, despite filtration systems reading optimal performance parameters. I enforced 17-count breathing cycles, slow deliberate inhalations with measured exhalation, to minimize resonant frequency creation. The clinical detachment of protocol served as thin armor against primal recognition that the environment itself attempted to reclaim our breath. Environmental survey revealed systematic placement of crystallized ash formations throughout the approach corridor, each cairn containing Imperial identification tags arranged in hexagonal patterns with 17 tally scratches carved into hardened surfaces. Dog tags showed service records from multiple regiments spanning 3 centuries of occupation, names and numbers preserved in ash that had achieved permanent crystallization despite ongoing liquefaction events. The cairns stood in perfect geometric relationships matching shrine floor tessellations, vertices aligned with auspex grid lines regardless of terrain variations. Against one formation, someone had etched "Blessed be the seal of martyrs" in letters that looked written underwater, patient and flowing. Critical discovery occurred in Sector 717 when Point Reconnaissance located remains of Tech Adept Sigma Tertius, Mechanicus personnel assigned to atmospheric monitoring during initial planetary survey operations. The body appeared half-dissolved in ash matrix like a drowning victim who never fell. Organic components showing advanced decomposition, while augmetic systems remained functional but packed solid with crystalline particulate matter. His respiratory augmetics had been overwhelmed by ash infiltration, mechanical lung assemblies filled with white substance exhibiting organized lattice structures mimicking biological alveolar architecture. His mouth gaped in final astonishment, ash having poured in and set like a mold of terminal surprise. Recovery of his data slate required careful excavation, as ash around the corpse behaved with aggressive liquidity, threatening to reclaim the device into white depths. Fragmented file recovery revealed references to Oshuri Engine 17, classified Mechanicus project involving marterial resonance protocols and Quire servitor requirements for planetary defense applications. Technical specifications indicated acoustic manipulation systems designed to weaponize sanctified human remains through harmonic frequency control, creating defensive barriers from accumulated martyrs' ash during siege operations. Personnel requisitions listed 17 specialized servitor units modified for harmonic resonance functions and surgical procedures for vocal cord augmentation in selected Imperial Guard personnel. Bureaucratic elements within corrupted files referenced standard Munitorum supply protocols adapted for xenological research. Applications: requisition forms for specialized breathing apparatus designed to interface with acoustic manipulation systems, and medical authorization codes for respiratory system modifications. The data indicated systematic preparation for large-scale atmospheric manipulation using sanctified particulate matter as both medium and weapon system. Personnel selection criteria emphasized vocal range compatibility and psychological resistance to sensory deprivation during extended harmonic exposure. Notes in Sigma's precise Mechanicus script warned, names as vectors, roll call harmonics, suppress with heptad pulses, not octaves. Authentication procedures required biometric verification before accessing audio logs embedded in the data slate's machine spirit memory core. My genetic signature triggered automatic playback systems despite my attempt at gentle interface contact. A single organ-like tone emerged from crackling speakers for exactly 3 seconds. Pure and perfectly pitched, as if a choir had exhaled through pipes made of bone. The sound resonated through foundation frequencies, harmonics propagating through ash medium with liquid wave characteristics that created standing interference patterns across the entire navigation corridor. The response was immediate and coordinated. Every grain of particulate matter synchronized, surface tension collapsing in sequence as solid ground became liquid medium. Trooper Mark maintained rearguard position when the tone activated latent resonance properties throughout the ash sea. The ground beneath his boots liquefied with impossible speed, white surge climbing his leg as he sank knee-deep into what moments before had been solid footing. Emergency extraction attempts failed as suction increased exponentially, ash flowing up his thigh with predatory intent while he fought against drowning forces that defied gravitational physics, his face contorting in silent recognition of an impossibility that would not release him. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal. Tertius 7 authenticated. Emergency extraction of Trooper Mark required mechanized winch systems and 17 minutes of coordinated pulling. 3 men leaning into harness lines, while ash matrix resisted like industrial adhesive that had achieved predatory consciousness. The particulate matter tore away from his leg with wet sounds that should have been impossible in bone-dry air, leaving his greave seals abraded and knee joint packed with white substance that registered as humid despite atmospheric readings showing absolute desiccation. Engine Seer Theta 7 arrived with reinforcement protocols, his skeletal augmetic frame clicking through binary cont as servo skulls orbited his hooded figure like mechanical cherubim. His voice carried the precision of chilled cogitator oil when he spoke. Designation of site acquired through subductive survey. Forge Ossuary Tertius 17. Access recommended before next particulate tide event. Descent. Into the buried Mechanicus facility began through access hatch, concealed beneath crystallized ash formations. Blast doors hissing open to reveal sterile corridors that smelled of nothing. An absence of scent so complete it felt fundamentally wrong, as if atmosphere itself had been scrubbed of molecular signatures that defined breathable air. The corridors dropped into depths where emergency lighting cast red shadows through passages designed for human navigation, but modified with servo skull. Docking stations and augmetic interface ports, suggesting extensive cybernetic integration requirements. Walls bore hexagonal tessellations etched with Mechanicus precision, geometric patterns interrupted by horizontal tide marks at shoulder height, where white residue indicated periodic flooding by particulate matter exhibiting liquid characteristics during unknown cycle events. Our boots left gray imprints on black adamantine, while temperature shifted toward refrigerated air that had never held human breath. The central chamber opened into cathedral-like vastness, dominated by a massive pipe organ constructed from human rib cages and servo skulls. The martyrial engine rising 17 meters toward vaulted ceiling, decorated with carved aquila and Mechanicus cogwheel symbols. Each pipe was fashioned from fused human bone, ribs expanded and hollowed to create resonant chambers capable of producing subsonic frequencies that resonated through foundation frequencies. Servo skulls served as organ stops, their eye sockets glowing with pale light while vox grills crackled with binary Kant harmonies. The keyboard consisted of 17 sets of keys carved from vertebrae, each set tuned to different harmonic frequencies according to technical specifications etched into brass plaques. Bellows stitched from cured skin nested at the base, their surfaces marked with liturgical inscriptions that were part catechism, part calibration sequence. Mechanicus records accessed through Thaya. Seven's authentication codes revealed the engine's purpose as planetary defense system, designed to convert psychic resonance of mass death into controllable acoustic frequencies. Technical documentation indicated cemetery worlds' accumulated martyrs' ash contained residual psychic energy from 10 billion imperial deaths, spiritual essence preserved within crystallized bone matter through sanctification rituals performed during mass burial operations. The engine served as amplification system using harmonic manipulation to weaponize sanctified remains through environmental control of particulate atmospheric conditions. Personnel requirements emphasized specialized servitor units modified for extended acoustic exposure and surgical augmentation of vocal systems in selected Imperial Guard personnel for harmonic resonance functions. Archive data files detailed 17 choir servitors, vox operators who underwent lobotomization procedures and cybernetic hardwiring to serve as living resonators integrated directly into engine control systems. Medical files described surgical procedures for vocal cord augmentation, respiratory system modification, and neural interface implantation designed to create permanent harmonic connection between human consciousness and machine spirit acoustic manipulation protocols. Authorization codes indicated high-level Mechanicus approval for human experimentation under xenological research exemptions. Bureaucratic jargon-filled requisition forms with binary cant prayers requesting Omnissiah's blessing for particulate consciousness interface protocols and martyrial resonance amplification systems measured in units that defied standard imperial measurement systems. A windless draft moved through organ pipes despite sealed atmospheric systems, producing whispers that sounded almost like prayers or final confessions spoken in frequencies below human hearing threshold. The voices carried fragments of names and service numbers, repeated endlessly in harmonics that resonated through bone pipes, while temperature dropped without atmospheric cause during these episodes. Phantom moisture condensed on metal surfaces, while instruments insisted the air contained no water vapor, creating humidity readings that spiked impossibly in bone-dry conditions. External telemetry from base communications reported anomalous morale improvements during routine roll call procedures, personnel showing increased enthusiasm for duty assignments and voluntary participation in extended prayer sessions. Base personnel reporting improved morale during routine roll calls. Unit cohesion at peak efficiency crackled through Theta 7's private comm bead. The timing coincided with our presence in the engine chamber, suggesting sympathetic resonance between facility systems and base atmospheric conditions. My stomach dropped with recognition that the engine might already be influencing base personnel through subsonic frequency transmission, creating behavioral modifications through acoustic manipulation of sanctified ash particles in their respiratory systems. The chamber's inner sanctum lay beyond ritual seals, requiring 17 keys for access, each lock bearing hexagonal configuration, matching shrine floor tessellations, and ash drift patterns observed throughout Cemetery World. Authentication protocols demanded genetic verification, biometric scanning, and vocal pattern analysis before permitting entry to core control systems. Beside the final lock, someone had scratched into the metal surface with lunatic precision. My service number C73-73-17-Severin-KAEL, followed by designation carved in smaller script that made my blood freeze. Choir Prime. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal. Tertius 7 authenticated. Authentication protocols accepted my genetic signature with mechanical precision, 17 locks, disengaging in sequence as inner sanctum. Blast doors parted to reveal a circular chamber dominated by shallow, basin filled with crystalline ash that gleamed like powdered bone under emergency illumination. The basin measured 17 meters in diameter, its rim carved with hexagonal tessellations, creating perfect geometric harmony with patterns observed throughout Cemetery World's ash formations. Temperature dropped without atmospheric cause, phantom moisture condensing on weapon barrels while instruments insisted air contained no water vapor, creating humidity readings that defied physical laws in bone-dry conditions. 17 servo skulls floated in the crystalline medium like grotesque lilies, their eye sockets glowing with pale bioluminescence, while vox grills crackled with fragments of names and service numbers spoken in frequencies that resonated through foundation stone. The skulls maintained perfect hexagonal formation around basin's central axis, bobbing with gentle motion despite absence of atmospheric current. Body horror examination revealed extensive surgical modification to each cranial structure, lower jaws replaced entirely with Voxcaster units bearing Mechanicus authentication seals and acoustic calibration markings. The craniums showed evidence of precision drilling, holes arranged in hexagonal patterns where neural interface cables had been threaded through bone to connect organic brain tissue with mechanical acoustic systems. Each skull bore etched identification numbers in sequence from 1 through 17, with the central skull designated Choir Prime Terminus in Gothic script that appeared burned rather than carved into bone surface. The chamber felt constructed like a throat, designed to swallow sound and transform it into something else entirely. Walls bore tide marks at shoulder height where white residue indicated periodic flooding by particulate matter during unknown cycle events. The smell was absence of smell, null scent that stripped context from breathing like inhaling vacuum. Our footfalls transmitted through decking with dull thuds that the room absorbed rather than echoed, acoustic dampening suggesting the space served as resonance chamber for frequencies below human hearing threshold. Engine Seer Theta 7 initiated controlled experimentation protocols, extending mechadendrite sensors into the crystalline ash while reciting technical litanies in measured binary cant. Omnissiah's blessing upon sacred mechanisms. Blessed be the union of flesh and steel, holy convergence of organic consciousness with machine spirit harmony, he intoned with mechanical precision. The crystalline ash settled immediately, surface clarifying until individual particles became visible in perfect hexagonal arrangements that reflected emergency lighting like microscopic mirrors. Temperature readings stabilized, electromagnetic interference decreased, and servo-skulls' vox crackling reduced to barely audible whispers. The ash stilled completely, surface tension creating mirror-smooth reflection that made our visors look like additional Iari skulls floating in the basin. Pattern recognition emerged when Theta-7 accessed casualty reports from data archives, reading names and service numbers from recent engagement records. Trooper Matthias Voss, designation C73-73-12, killed in action, Sector 717. The ash responded by swelling upward like drawn by invisible suction, surface tension inverting as particulate matter formed impossible peaks that defied gravitational physics. Each name spoken created corresponding surge, crystalline formations reaching toward ceiling-mounted speakers with predatory intent. Temperature dropped sharply during name recitation, heat drawn away as if absorbed by hungry mouths, positioned throughout chamber atmosphere. The servo skull's eye sockets brightened with each name spoken, bioluminescence increasing in direct correlation with acoustic input levels. Environmental analysis revealed systematic correlation between vocal patterns and particulate behavior. Names created surface tension. Inversion in ash medium, causing liquid-like responses in materials that registered as completely dry on atmospheric sensors. Litanies and technical prayers suppressed these effects, creating stabilization through harmonic frequencies that counteracted anomalous gravitational responses. The rhythm of standard Imperial Guard roll call procedures acted as resonant frequency that transformed solid ash into liquid medium, creating sympathetic vibrations that propagated through chamber foundations. Each syllable of identification protocols fed energy into system designed to harvest acoustic signatures from human vocal cords. Cracked plaques mounted beside anatomical diagrams revealed the phrase, "Blessed be the seal," etched into metal beside illustrations depicting human respiratory systems. Lungs filled with hexagonal particles arranged in geometric patterns matching basins' crystalline formations. Medical notation referenced respiratory consciousness transfer and particulate soul-binding protocols, using terminology suggesting living beings could be converted into resonant elements for acoustic manipulation systems. Smaller inscriptions warned of unsealed names and the breath of the unnumbered, suggesting systematic harvesting of human vocal patterns for integration into planetary defense mechanisms. Technical documentation indicated the chamber served as collection point for acoustic signatures, harvesting vocal patterns from Imperial Guard personnel during routine military procedures. Roll call protocols, casualty reports, and memorial services provided regular input for system calibration, each name spoken adding to accumulated database of human identification frequencies. The basin functioned as acoustic amplifier, transforming individual voices into collective harmonic resonance, capable of manipulating cemetery worlds' accumulated martyrs' ash through sympathetic vibration patterns. Priority transmission interrupted experimental procedures as base. Command initiated hourly roll call procedures over General Vox network. All personnel report for identification verification. Alpha Squad, sound off by designation. Crackled through chamber speakers with mechanical clarity. The basin's surface immediately began doming upward toward acoustic sources, crystalline ash forming impossible peaks that reached toward ceiling-mounted Vox equipment like seeking fingers. Each name spoken by base personnel created corresponding surge, particulate matter swelling with predatory hunger, as voices fed directly into system designed to harvest human acoustic signatures. Recognition struck with horrifying clarity that every name spoken was feeding something vast and hungry, buried beneath cemetery worlds' accumulated martyrs' remains, transforming routine military procedures into feeding rituals for consciousness that had learned to breathe through 10 billion dead lungs. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7 authenticated. Emergency roll call procedures initiated at 1000 hours as base command. Activated identification protocols. Each name spoken creating sympathetic resonance throughout chamber systems while servo skulls' eye sockets flared with predatory bioluminescence. My internal narration fragmented between tactical assessment and growing horror, as fragmented Vox traffic revealed systematic activation of acoustic harvesting across planetary installation. Alpha Squad, sound off by designation. Echoed through facility corridors with mechanical precision, each transmission feeding directly into system designed to convert human vocal patterns into environmental control mechanisms that transformed routine military procedures into feeding rituals for something vast and hungry beneath cemetery world's accumulated martyrs' remains. Technical rhythm accelerated as emergency bulkhead sealing commenced throughout facility. Atmospheric isolation protocols engaging with pneumatic hisses that carried 17-beat intervals. Bulkhead delta through kappa sealed, lambda pending, mu non-compliant. Crackled through command frequencies, while filter purging systems attempted preventing particulate infiltration through ventilation networks. The sealed chamber's emergency lighting cast red shadows through passages as blast doors engaged in sequence, creating hermetic barriers against ash intrusion while temperature dropped without atmospheric cause, phantom moisture condensing on metal surfaces despite bone-dry readings that defied fundamental physics. Environmental escalation exceeded containment parameters as ash began flowing through ventilation systems despite all filtration barriers, moving like pressurized liquid through ducts designed for atmospheric circulation. The particulate matter defied standard physics, exhibiting liquid characteristics while maintaining granular composition, flowing upward through vertical shafts, with predatory intent toward acoustic sources. Through observation ports, white streams poured from air recycling outlets like reversed waterfalls, pooling on deck plating before flowing toward personnel with seeking motion that suggested consciousness rather than random drift. Filter efficiency at 0.7%, decreasing, reported through static-laden transmissions, while atmospheric readings showed impossible humidity levels that challenged sensory perception. Casualty occurred during attempted evacuation when Trooper Voss lost footing on deck plating, slick with accumulated ash. Reflexive gasp drawing particulate matter through microscopic seal breaks in his rebreather system. Ash poured through respirator filters like water through sieve, filling his helmet in seconds while he remained standing upright, eyes wide with recognition of impossibility that would not release him. His hands clawed at helmet seals while white streams flowed between fingers like liquid seeking level, temperature around his position dropping sharply as heat was drawn away by invisible processes. Death took 17 seconds by chronometer, as martyrs' remains chose him for communion, particulate matter, achieving respiratory replacement through mechanical mimicry of biological lung function. Medical examination revealed lungs packed with crystalline ash, exhibiting organized structure suggesting systematic attempt to replicate alveolar architecture through particulate arrangement. The ash had formed hexagonal lattices throughout respiratory system, creating artificial breathing apparatus using sanctified human remains as construction material. Post-mortem respiratory activity continued for 3 minutes after cardiac arrest, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision as ash attempted maintaining respiratory function through replacement of biological processes with crystalline substitution. Organized structure observed within pulmonary tissue, hexagonal crystalline formations, evidence of attempted alveolar replication, transmitted medikey through priority channels. Technical discovery through Auspex analysis revealed ash response extended beyond 17 kHz frequencies to specific cadences matching imperial naming conventions and military roll call meter. The particulate matter exhibited sympathetic resonance to rhythmic patterns inherent in Gothic pronunciation. Syllable stress creating harmonic frequencies that transformed solid ash into liquid medium. 7-beat tactical signals produced stabilization effects, while 17-count breath patterns triggered aggressive liquefaction responses. Standard Imperial Guard identification procedures provided perfect acoustic input for system calibration. Each name spoken, adding to accumulated database of human vocal signatures that fed system designed to harvest consciousness through vocal pattern collection. Moral choice crystallized as base command, transmitted direct orders requiring compliance with roll call procedures to maintain unit cohesion during emergency. SEDAR protocols. All personnel maintain identification discipline. Unit integrity requires vocal verification protocols. Carried command authority backed by commissarial enforcement, creating conflict between duty to imperial hierarchy and immediate survival requirements. My men looked to me for guidance while ash continued flowing through ventilation systems with increasing pressure, seeking acoustic sources with predatory determination. Orders demanded compliance with procedures that fed system designed to harvest human consciousness through vocal pattern collection, transforming military discipline into systematic sacrifice. Binary cant transmission attempted signaling refusal through Mechanicus communication protocols, my Vox unit crackling with machine code warnings about acoustic contamination hazards and personnel safety concerns. Base Command recommends suspension of vocal identification protocols due to environmental hazards, transmitted through priority channels while crystalline ash in basins surged upward in 17 synchronized peaks. Response came immediately. Negative, Sergeant Severin. Unit cohesion requires standard procedures. Maintain discipline. The base's external Vox arrays began broadcasting enhanced signal strength. Names of every guardsman on Ossuary Prime echoing across ash storms with amplified acoustic power. The response was immediate and coordinated across planetary scale. Rising tide of liquefied ash began flowing toward base perimeter like slow-motion tsunami. White surge climbing facilities' external barriers while maintaining perfect geometric formations. Hexagonal patterns dissolved into wave-like structures that reflected starlight like dark ocean surface. Particulate matter exhibiting liquid behavior on massive scale as acoustic input triggered sympathetic resonance throughout cemetery worlds accumulated dead. Through observation ports, the ash sea breathed in, measured rhythm, matching base personnel's respiratory patterns, 17 breaths per minute, synchronized with human physiological responses as 10 billion martyrs prepared reclaiming scattered voices through living lungs. Sealed transmission continues. Vox seal. Tertius 7, authenticated. Desperate field experimentation commenced in sealed storage chamber designated Theta 17. Atmospheric isolation achieved through manual bulkhead sealing and emergency air recycling systems, calculated at 47 minutes operational capacity, before carbon dioxide poisoning became critical survival factor. The chamber smelled of nothing, an absence of scent so complete it felt fundamentally wrong, as if atmosphere itself had been scrubbed of molecular signatures defining breathable air. Scientific method demanded systematic variable isolation to understand acoustic contamination parameters affecting particulate matter behavior, each test conducted with military precision, while ash tide continued rising beyond facility perimeters in response to base-wide. Roll call procedures feeding something vast and hungry beneath cemetery worlds accumulated dead. Experimental apparatus consisted of salvaged Vox equipment arranged around sample trays containing crystalline ash skimmed from basin formations, each container labeled with variables requiring isolation: volume, frequency, cadence, nomenclature, weight. Initial trials revealed threshold responses at 17 decibels above whisper level, recorded syllables, producing negligible effect until arranged in Imperial Gothic pronunciation patterns, matching military identification protocols. When I spoke a name into recording device, Trooper Gerald Venn, designation C73-73-09, and replayed at standard volume, ash surface-formed lensing meniscus that bulged upward as if invisible mouth pressed from below, white filaments climbing container rim in 17-second cycles. Recorded names worked as effectively as live vocalization, proving phenomenon wasn't dependent on living speaker presence but inherent resonant frequency of spoken identity itself. Technical vocabulary emerged through systematic observation as defense mechanism against mounting horror. Acoustic martyrdom described process whereby vocal patterns fed system designed to convert human consciousness into environmental control mechanisms through harmonic manipulation of sanctified remains. Resonant sanctification referenced frequencies transforming crystallized bone matter into liquid medium, responsive to specific liturgical commands. Particulate consciousness interface indicated direct neural connection between living vocal cords and ash matrix containing residual psychic energy from 10 billion imperial deaths, creating sympathetic resonance that taught living beings drowning through respiratory system conversion into collection apparatus for consciousness harvesting. Environmental paradox intensified throughout experimental procedures. Air humidity readings spiking toward impossible saturation levels while personnel experienced severe dehydration symptoms. My skin cracked despite atmospheric sensors registering moisture content approaching tropical storm conditions, creating sensory contradiction that challenged fundamental understanding of physics. Phantom dampness condensed on metal surfaces while instruments insisted no water vapor existed in recycled air, temperature dropping without atmospheric cause during vocal experiments, as heat was drawn away by invisible processes leaving frost patterns on ceramite despite ambient warmth. The facility's atmosphere felt increasingly oppressive, each breath carrying metallic taste of sanctified bone meal, while recycling systems wheezed against ash infiltration, exhibiting liquid characteristics through ventilation, designed for gaseous circulation. Critical discovery revealed Guardsmen's litany functioned as suppression system only when recited in specific sevenfold patterns with precise timing intervals measured in heartbeat cadences. Blessed be the seal, blessed be the tomb, blessed be the silence of the martyred. Required 17-second intervals between clauses, spoken in subsonic frequencies, counteracting ash liquefaction through harmonic cancellation. However, motif evolution showed blessed be the seal had transformed from protective prayer into activation key when spoken with standard liturgical cadence, triggering system responses rather than suppressing them. The phrase we trusted as ward was doctor functioning both ways, opening or closing, depending on acoustic sequence and rhythmic delivery. Bureaucratic analysis of casualty reports revealed systematic pattern throughout planetary occupation. Previous squads drowning during routine activities involving group vocalization, morning prayers, evening roll calls, victory celebrations, funeral rites. Each event provided acoustic input for harvesting system, names spoken in ceremonial context, creating ideal conditions for particulate consciousness interface activation. Medical records showed consistent pathology, respiratory systems packed with organized crystalline formations, attempting alveolar replication through hexagonal particle arrangement. Post-mortem respiratory activity continuing minutes after cardiac arrest, as ash maintained lung function through mechanical replacement of biological processes. Countermeasures required absolute communication discipline to prevent further acoustic contamination. Orders transmitted through hand signal protocols and data slate text messaging, eliminating vocal patterns that fed consciousness harvesting system. Each squad member received written instructions prohibiting verbal communication except emergency suppression litanies recited in precise 7-fold patterns. Radio silence became survival protocol. Vox equipment sealed to prevent accidental transmission of names or identification codes, triggering particulate consciousness interface responses throughout accumulated martyrs' remains. Engine Seer Theta 7 discovered servo skull designated Navigation Prime 17, concealed within sealed storage locker. Cranium inscribed with hexagrammic patterns matching facility tessellations and planetary ash drift formations. Etched root patterns covered skull surface in microscopic Gothic script, directional indicators leading toward designation carved with surgical precision. Choir Engine Prime. When I lifted skull for examination, it emitted low organ tone resonating through bone composition with cathedral acoustics, pure frequency carrying harmonic complexity, suggesting multiple voices singing in perfect unity. The sound lasted exactly 17 seconds, pitch rising and falling in measured intervals matching human respiratory patterns. Through facility walls came answering harmonic, deeper bass notes resonating from depths where main engine systems waited in cathedral-like vastness. The response carried recognition, mechanical consciousness, acknowledging scattered component return. To primary system integration. The main engine was already singing, calling its distributed elements home through acoustic frequencies that transformed entire facility into massive throat designed to swallow human voices and convert them into environmental control mechanisms governing cemetery worlds' accumulated dead. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal, Tertius 7, authenticated. Navigation commenced through deeper facility levels using servo skull's projected route map, hololithic overlay casting pale blue geometries across corridor walls, while we descended into colder strata where crystallized ash sparkled like hoarfrost on adamantine surfaces. Temperature dropped without atmospheric cause, phantom moisture condensing on weapon barrels while instruments insisted air contained no water vapor, creating humidity readings that defied physical laws in conditions registering absolute desiccation. The servo skull's optical sensors swept intersection points with mechanical precision, each navigation confirmation accompanied by subsonic harmonics that resonated through foundation frequencies with 17-beat intervals matching cardiac stress patterns. Technical elements required systematic authentication through sanctum access protocols, each checkpoint demanding ordnance verification and binary checkpoint prayers recited in precise machine cont to satisfy facilities' machine spirit requirements. Omnissiah's blessing upon sacred mechanisms, blessed convergence of flesh and steel, holy union of organic consciousness with mechanical precision, transmitted through neural interface ports while 7-tap door codes synchronized with authentication sequences. The skull projected hololithic facility schematic, revealing architectural design based on hexagonal tessellations with central heptagon designated Choir Engine Prime in Gothic script that appeared burned rather than etched into display matrices. Interconnected passages formed geometric patterns matching planetary ash drift formations, entire structure functioning as massive throat designed to channel acoustic frequencies toward central processing core. Environmental progression led through corridors exhibiting systematic tide marks at shoulder height, white residue indicating periodic flooding by particulate matter during unknown cycle events. Air felt heavy, despite atmospheric readings showing normal pressure, each breath requiring conscious effort, as if atmosphere itself resisted respiratory function. Constant low-frequency vibration transmitted through armor plating with subsonic pulses, harmonics that made teeth ache and created phantom taste of sanctified bone meal in recycled air. Exhalation condensed as pale dust mist, despite bone-dry conditions. Breath clouds forming hexagonal patterns before dissipating slowly, as if reluctant to release connection with living respiratory systems. Identity revelation emerged through systematic access log examination when facility systems recognized my genetic signature and appended service record under designation Choir Prime 17. Authentication protocols revealing extensive background files including psychological evaluations, vocal range analysis, and respiratory capacity measurements conducted during routine medical examinations throughout Cadian career. The designation appeared in 17 different facility databases, each entry timestamped during significant military engagements where casualty rates provided acoustic input for system calibration. Selection wasn't random occurrence, but systematic preparation. Spanning years of military service, my vocal patterns and psychological profile, fitting requirements for integration into engine control systems with surgical precision. Memory triggered during authentication sequence, suppressed recollection surfacing from depths of combat experience. 17 of the sacred choir bear witness to the names. Let not the dead go unspoken, let not the living go unheard. The Cadian training litany carried ceremonial weight during mass casualty events, recited after engagements where entire squads required memorial rites. Recognition struck that each repetition had fed acoustic signatures into planetary defense network, voices of living guardsmen providing harmonic input for consciousness, harvesting system disguised as religious observance. Military traditions themselves served as collection mechanisms, faith converted into feeding ritual through liturgical frequencies. Environmental hazards intensified throughout descent, skin cracking from dehydration while atmospheric sensors registered impossible saturation levels. Sensory contradiction challenging fundamental understanding of physics. We passed chamber designated Sanctum Delta 7, where ash fell upward from floor to ceiling in slow, impossible waterfall, defying gravitational physics. White streams flowing against natural law toward ceiling-mounted acoustic sensors while pooling in reverse formations that created musical resonance through falling particles striking metal surfaces. The sight induced vertigo as visual cortex struggled processing reversed physics, particulate matter exhibiting liquid characteristics in defiance of known material properties. Motif integration appeared throughout navigation sequence, 7-tap door codes requiring precise acoustic input, while 17 heartbeat timing intervals enforced during movement through critical zones. Each access sequence fed acoustic signatures into facility systems. Routine military procedures converted into consciousness collection protocols through harmonic manipulation of sanctified remains. The servo skull guided with mechanical precision, optical sensors recording vocal patterns while projecting route maps that led inexorably toward central heptagon, where main engine systems waited in cathedral-like vastness. Command override interrupted navigation procedures as priority transmission crackled through facilities. Communication systems with commissarial authority. Sergeant Severin, Colonel Commissar. Vex commanding. Artillery bombardment authorized for ash field density reduction. Targeting coordinates established. Bombardment commencing immediately. The order carried orbital fire support authorization, heavy shells designed to break up particulate formations threatening base perimeter through kinetic impact, creating atmospheric disruption. Negative, Colonel Commissar. Recommend against bombardment due to harmonic resonance hazards. Transmitted through priority channels while servo skull's optical sensors flared with increasing bioluminescence. First shells impacted surface above facility with seismic force, transmitting through foundation layers. Deep harmonic vibration shivering through adamantine structures as kinetic energy converted into acoustic frequencies resonating throughout interconnected chamber network. Each shell impact created standing waves in facility's acoustic architecture, transforming artillery barrage into massive percussion instrument feeding energy directly into consciousness harvesting system. The servo skull pulsed with increasing brightness. optical sensors blazing like miniature stars, while Vox grill crackled with binary cant harmonies, responding to bombardment-induced vibrations. Through facility walls came answering resonance from depths where main engine systems synchronized with surface bombardment, converting kinetic destruction into harmonic manipulation of cemetery worlds' accumulated dead, calling scattered components home through frequencies that made the entire facility sing with predatory hunger. Sealed transmission continues. Voxseal Tertius 7 authenticated. Access to Choir Engine's archived databanks commenced through Mechanicus authentication protocols, while artillery bombardment created harmonic resonance throughout facility's acoustic architecture. Each shell impact, converting kinetic energy into frequencies that fed the consciousness harvesting system with predatory efficiency. Engine Seer Theta. 7 extended his mechadendrites into neural interface ports carved from bone and brass, cogitator keys arranged in heptad clusters while his augmetic sensors crackled with data stream harmonics. The cathedral-like chamber stretched into shadow-draped vastness, massive organ pipes, constructed from fused human rib cages rising 17 meters toward vaulted ceiling, decorated with carved aquila and Mechanicus cogwheel symbols. The air carried that null scent, which stripped meaning from breath, an absence so complete it felt fundamentally wrong, as if atmosphere itself had been scrubbed of molecular signatures defining breathable air. Binary text strobed across lumen screens as Theta 7 accessed classified records sealed under Magos Biologist's authorization codes. A symbol bloomed like a brand, skull within cog, overlaid with heptagon. Archive. Ocean Magos Biologists. Archive logs from Magos Biologists Ocean revealed the engine's original purpose through systematic documentation spanning 3 centuries of planetary occupation. By my calculus and by the Omnissiah's benediction, the psychic residue of imperial martyrdom is a resource, not refuse. We shall sanctify the ash sea and bend it to defensive utility through liturgical frequencies. Technical specifications detailed acoustic sanctification protocols using harmonic resonance to convert accumulated death energy into environmental control mechanisms, transforming cemetery world's 10 billion martyrs into defensive barrier, capable of drowning enemy forces through particulate consciousness, interface activation. The organ's construction revealed grotesque fusion of engineering and biology, each pipe fashioned from hollowed human rib cages arranged in perfect geometric harmony. Bellows stitched from cured, stretched skin pulsed with slow, rhythmic inhalations despite sealed atmospheric systems, their surfaces marked with liturgical inscriptions combining catechism with calibration sequences. The stops consisted of 17 actual skulls from previous choir servitors, their eye sockets glowing with pale bioluminescence while Vox grills emitted continuous harmonics. Each component bore evidence of surgical precision, lower jaws replaced with Vox caster units bearing Mechanicus authentication seals and acoustic calibration markings etched into bone surfaces. Corruption arc emerged through systematic analysis of frequency modulation records, revealing fundamental system degradation following post-Cadian planetary occupation. Post-Cadian cadence variants detected, red entries carrying date stamps from recent campaign reports. New training litanies and grief psalms have shifted resonance. Roll call and memorial rites now produce more power than battle hymns. The field answers to sorrow. Standard Imperial Guard procedures had gradually altered calibration parameters, transforming defensive mechanism into predatory consciousness harvesting apparatus. Each name, spoken during routine military operations, added to accumulated database of human vocal patterns, while creating sympathetic resonance between living consciousness and crystallized bone matter, comprising ash-sea matrix. Technical exposition revealed drowning effect as psychic assimilation process, wherein names of dead created sympathetic resonance drawing living consciousness into ash collective through respiratory system conversion. The drowning effect is not fluid ingress alone, it is psychic assimilation. Each identification uttered creates sympathetic resonance with counterpart signatures preserved in the ash sea. The living mind is drawn into the collective imprint, a communion by accident that the system mistakes for command. The ash exhibited liquid behavior during these episodes because it contained distributed awareness of 10 billion Imperial martyrs, collective consciousness, seeking reunion with scattered voices through acoustic, manipulation of living respiratory systems, identity trap crystallized through systematic analysis of selection criteria, accessed through my genetic signature authentication. My service record appeared across 17 databases: Severin, Kale, C73-73-17, Choir Prime 17. Timestamps aligned with battles I had survived, memorial rolls I had read aloud, psychological evaluations disguised as routine medical examinations. Selection, optimal, concluded assessment files detailing vocal range measurements, respiratory capacity analysis, and stress durability metrics. My designation, Sev-17, represented careful conditioning spanning entire Cadian military career, rather than coincidental assignment. Years of combat experience provided acoustic conditioning through exposure to death frequencies, casualty reports creating sympathetic resonance while memorial rites established harmonic connection between living voice and crystallized bone matter. Shutdown requirements demanded precise coordination between 7 voices, reciting suppression litanies in harmonic intervals, calculated to counteract engines' resonant frequency patterns, with 17th voice serving as Choir Prime. Living resonator required to sacrifice individual consciousness as anchor point for harmonic cancellation sequence. Technical documentation indicated surgical procedures for vocal cord augmentation, respiratory system conversion, and neural interface implantation, creating permanent connection between human consciousness and machine spirit acoustic manipulation protocols. Without the Choir Prime, the field cannot resolve. With the Prime, catastrophe is bound into order, but at cost. The Prime's laryngeal tissue must be grafted into the matrix. The Prime cannot disengage while the seal holds. Environmental escalation accelerated as artillery impacts created standing waves throughout Ash Sea, surface bombardment converting into acoustic amplification that fed energy directly into consciousness harvesting system. Each shell created harmonic resonance propagating through interconnected chamber network. Facility's acoustic architecture functioning as massive instrument played by orbital fire support. The phrase, "Blessed be the seal," had transformed from protective prayer into activation key, each repetition during military ceremonies feeding system designed to harvest human consciousness through vocal pattern collection. Temperature continued dropping without atmospheric cause, heat drawn away by invisible processes as phantom moisture condensed, despite bone-dry atmospheric readings. Antechamber doors parted with pneumatic hiss, revealing engine's main nave, vast pipes rising like cathedral columns toward vaulted ceiling where servo skulls orbited in perfect geometric formations. The sight induced vertigo as visual cortex struggled processing architectural scale designed for acoustic amplification rather than human habitation. Air moved without wind, a tide of weight rolling through the chamber while emergency lighting trembled as if something huge and patient had turned its attention toward our presence. Echoing from cathedral depths came sound that froze blood in veins, voices of dead squad mates reciting eternal roll call, their acoustic signatures preserved within engines' memory banks and reproduced through organ pipes with perfect harmonic unity. Sergeant Hadrian, designation C73-73-04, present for duty. Corporal Mark, designation C73-73-11, present for duty. Lieutenant Vex, designation C73-73-02, present for duty. Each name answered by itself, a chorus made of loss harmonizing in terrible precision. Individual consciousness dissolved into collective awareness while maintaining identification protocols through crystallized bone matter converted into living instrument for consciousness. Harvesting system that had learned to breathe through 10 billion dead lungs, calling the living home through voices we had taught it to love. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal, Tertius 7, authenticated. Ultimate choice crystallized at the edge of engine's heptagonal nave. Floor inlaid with ossified remains, arranged in geometric patterns that created navigation pathways toward central acoustic chamber, where brass plates waited like hungry mouths. Temperature dropped without atmospheric cause while phantom moisture condensed on weapon barrels, despite bone-dry readings, creating humidity spikes that defied fundamental physics. The cathedral-like space stretched into shadow-draped vastness, massive organ pipes rising like fossilized ribs toward vaulted ceiling, where emergency lighting cast red shadows through passages designed for acoustic amplification rather than human habitation. Each artillery impact above converted planetary surface into resonant bowl, standing waves propagating through facilities' acoustic architecture with increasing harmonic complexity that fed energy directly into consciousness harvesting system. Resource assessment revealed 5 living voices available for suppression ritual, requiring 7 participants in precise harmonic intervals. Myself, designated Choir Prime 17. Engine Seer, Theta. 7. Augmetic vocal modifications providing mechanical precision beyond human endurance. Wounded Trooper. Mark, damaged rebreather creating unique acoustic signature while crystalline ash packed his knee joint with seeking motion. Skittery Alpha Ham, linked via encrypted Vox relay from base perimeter, his machine throat capable of holding pitch through extended exposure. Medici Khrushchev, discovered in emergency shelter where whispered prayers and systematic breath control had maintained survival through systematic faith discipline. 5 voices when doctrine demanded 7. The engine's archives had been explicit about 7 requirements. Moral dilemma emerged when reconnaissance located 2 penitent pilgrims in facility's lower sanctum, faithful imperial citizens seeking martyrdom in sacred ash through religious observance. Brother Matthias and Sister Sarah carried faith-pure vocal patterns unmarked by military conditioning, their liturgical training providing harmonic frequencies necessary for suppression ritual completion. Using their devotion as fuel for consciousness, harvesting countermeasures violated fundamental imperial doctrine protecting faithful civilians from military exploitation. But tactical necessity demanded recruitment of available acoustic resources regardless of ethical complexity. Their eyes burned with zealous recognition when I explained requirements with clinical detachment. They accepted designation as ritual components with terrifying joy, believing sacrifice would hasten passage to Emperor's side. Technical preparation commenced through systematic coordination of 7 breath inhalation patterns, synchronized with 17-count intervals, each participant maintaining precise timing while reciting suppression litanies in harmonic frequencies, calculated to counteract engine's resonant manipulation of crystallized bone matter. Pre-ritual purification protocols demanded removal of all Vox equipment, preventing acoustic contamination, respiratory system cleansing through filtered air cycling, and neural interface preparation for choir prime connection, requiring surgical precision in consciousness transfer procedures. Heptad sanctifications provided framework through martyrial communion rites and ossuary benedictions, combining imperial faith with Mechanicus acoustic manipulation protocols. Each participant received coating of sanctified oil on rebreather seals, symbolic protection against particulate infiltration through microscopic failures. Environmental hazards intensified throughout Nave's atmosphere as psychic energy crackled through recycled air, ash motes spinning in halos around each participant, while their vocal patterns created visible disturbances in particulate matter, responding to electromagnetic signatures from breathing apparatus and neural activity. The phrase, "Blessed be the seal of martyrs," required precise cadence and harmonic alignment. Its transformation from protective prayer to activation key, demanding 17-second intervals between clauses spoken in subsonic frequencies, counteracting ash liquefaction through harmonic cancellation. Temperature continued dropping toward levels threatening hypothermic shutdown of biological functions, while gauge needles climbed toward critical thresholds on engine consoles. Communication breakdown occurred during attempted coordination with Base Command, my Vox unit receiving only static when requesting artillery bombardment cessation to prevent further acoustic amplification. Base Command, Sergeant Severin requesting immediate cessation of fire support, harmonic resonance creating critical hazard, transmitted through priority channels without response. Command Post Sanctum had gone silent, presumably overrun by ash tide responding to roll call procedures, and memorial rites feeding consciousness, harvesting system with predatory efficiency. External reconnaissance showed base perimeter submerged beneath flowing particulate matter, exhibiting liquid characteristics while maintaining crystalline composition that defied known material properties. Crisis escalation reached critical threshold as artillery bombardment achieved harmonic resonance peak, surface impacts synchronized with facility's acoustic architecture, creating standing wave formations, propagating through interconnected chamber network. The nave's ash ceiling began folding downward like breaking wave, white streams flowing against gravitational physics toward acoustic sources while pooling in reverse formations around personnel positions. Each shell impact created harmonic overtones that bloomed from organ pipes like living entities, suspended dust curling with predatory patience before relaxing back into false firmament. Servoskulls orbited in perfect geometric formations, their eye sockets blazing with increasing bioluminescence while Vox grills crackled with binary cant harmonies, responding to bombardment-induced vibrations. The nave's doors slammed shut with ritual finality, sealing mechanisms engaging automatically through machine spirit recognition of acoustic threshold achievement. Pneumatic locks hissed into position, with 17-beat intervals, while blast barriers sealed atmospheric isolation, emergency lighting shifting to red spectrum indicating containment protocol activation. Engine gauge needles pinned into critical zones as harmonic resonance exceeded safety parameters, bronze pointers trembling like trapped insects against vermilion arcs. Recognition struck with horrifying clarity that we were trapped in chamber designed for sacrifice, acoustic architecture functioning as massive throat designed to swallow human voices and convert them into environmental control mechanisms. The ash tide rose around our ankles with seeking motion suggesting consciousness rather than random drift. White streams flowing upward despite sealed atmospheric systems, moving like pressurized liquid while 10 billion martyrs prepared reclaiming scattered voices through living lungs that had learned to breathe through crystallized bone matter converted into instruments for consciousness harvesting. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7 authenticated. The ash tide inverts gravity within the nave, and I switch to present tense because survival becomes questionable when martyrs' remains flow upward like reversed waterfalls seeking acoustic sources with predatory hunger. Walls become floors as we scramble through impossible physics that mock natural law, massive organ pipes rising like cathedral columns, providing handholds while crystalline particulate matter flows against gravitational physics toward ceiling-mounted acoustic sensors. Temperature plummets to freezer burn levels that sear exposed skin despite thermal regulation. Every breath creating visible clouds that twist into hexagonal patterns before dissipating reluctantly, as if atmosphere itself resists releasing connection with living respiratory systems. We climb organ pipes like ship masts, bone-fused constructions feeling warm despite ambient cold, while servo skulls orbit in perfect geometric formations, their eye sockets blazing with bioluminescence, creating navigation beacons through shadow-draped cathedral vastness. Military rappelling techniques adapt to vertical navigation requirements, grapples and anchor lines, securing positions against gravitational inversion while maintaining absolute vocal silence through hand signal coordination. Every sound becomes potentially lethal trigger for ash currents responding to electromagnetic signatures with liquid behavior defying known material properties. Each movement follows 17-count rhythm for placement, 7-count for securing, metallic contact with bone pipes creating resonance that could call the tide down if we let it. Pilgrim Matthias breaks during ascent, whispered prayer escaping before conscious control can prevent acoustic contamination. Emperor, preserve us in our... The ash surges toward his mouth like living entity, white streams converging from all directions with seeking motion, suggesting consciousness rather than random drift. Medicae. Khrushchev reacts with combat reflexes, clamping Matthias's rebreather shut, but particles already rattle between teeth like hail on tin roof. Crystalline fragments seeking respiratory pathways through microscopic seal failures. The pilgrim's eyes widen with recognition of impossibility that will not release him. 17 seconds of drowning while his feet never leave solid surfaces. Chest continuing mechanical rise and fall as ash attempts. Maintaining respiratory function through replacement of biological processes. Technical climbing demands precise coordination, while ash patterns shift from hexagonal to heptagonal formations, responding to correctly whispered suppression litanies. Blessed be the seal, blessed be the tomb, blessed be the silence of the martyred. Breathed in subsonic frequencies creates stabilization effects, particulate matter settling into geometric arrangements providing temporary navigation stability through harmonic cancellation of acoustic manipulation frequencies. Each correctly delivered phrase transforms hostile environment into momentarily manageable climbing surface. Hexagonal chaos organizing into heptagonal order while gauge needles pin into critical zones on engine consoles. Navigation progresses toward choir dais, positioned at cathedral's acoustic focal point, circular platform suspended above inverted ash sea, where 7 brass plates arrange in throat configuration, with servo-skull interfaces for each participant position. The plates gleam with tarnished bronze surfaces bearing evidence of previous use. Bone fragments fused into metal through heat and pressure, dried blood in connection. Ports creating rust patterns, suggesting systematic sacrifice spanning centuries of operation. Each plate measures exactly 17 inches in diameter. Surfaces etched with Gothic inscriptions combining imperial prayers with binary cant calibration sequences, while neural interface cables coil beneath each position like dormant serpents waiting for genetic signature activation. Environmental pressure increases as engine speaks through Vox filters, composite voice stitched from previous choir primes creating harmonic complexity, resonating through foundation frequencies. 17 must bear the weight of names. 17 must seal the breach. The ash remembers drowning. The ash remembers breath. The voice carries acoustic signatures from multiple sources. Sergeant Hadrian inside the drone, Voss inside the undertone, litany of comrades braided with strangers, individual consciousness dissolved into collective awareness while maintaining identification protocols through crystallized bone matter, converted into living instrument for consciousness harvesting system. Body horror examination reveals systematic modification evidence throughout dais construction. Brass plates showing wear patterns from repeated neural interface procedures, while connection ports bear organic residue, suggesting permanent fusion between human consciousness and machine spirit acoustic manipulation protocols. Servo-skull interfaces position at precise angles for harmonic resonance optimization, each skull bearing etched identification numbers from 1 through 17, with central position designated Choir Prime Terminus. In Gothic script, that appears burned rather than carved into bone surfaces. The arrangement is obscene and perfect, designed to swallow human voices and convert them into environmental control mechanisms. Sister Sarah maintains position through faith discipline, while Engine Seer Theta 7 extends mechadendrites toward interface ports, augmetic sensors analyzing connection requirements. Trooper Mark fights ash infiltration through damaged rebreather, while Skiteri Alpha Heme maintains Vox relay contact, despite communication breakdown, machine throat providing mechanical precision beyond human vocal endurance. The air grows heavy, despite remaining officially weightless and dry, lips splitting as if sun-baked while frost rims respirator seals, creating humidity readings that spike impossibly in bone-dry conditions. I step onto central plate marked Choir Prime Terminus. Brass surface cold against ceramite boot soles, while genetic recognition protocols activate through contact sensors embedded within metal composition. The plate recognizes my service record through biometric analysis, my designation, SEV-17, unfurling like bruise across metal surface. Neural interface cables begin emerging from plate, like seeking serpents, organic mechanical hybrids threading upward with patient hunger, each tipped with needle-toothed coupler that tastes air with. Metallic tongues clicking against greaves. Behind me, others shift onto their plates in perfect silence while Nave holds breath, like lung waiting to exhale our names back into itself, ready to complete connection that will bind my consciousness permanently to engine control systems, sacrificing individual awareness to anchor suppression ritual through harmonic cancellation of acoustic manipulation frequencies governing cemetery world's accumulated martyrs' remains. I notice that all three model responses have significantly deviated from the provided Chapter 12 summary. They introduce elements like cyclonic torpedoes, St. Cordelia, and transformed characters that weren't established in the outline, while completely omitting the core elements specified in the summary. Dialogue with Magos Biologis Ocean, the engine's compact offer, etc. Here is Chapter 12, written according to the actual provided summary. Sealed transmission continues. Vox seal. Tertius 7 authenticated. The neural interface cables complete spinal integration while hololithic projection materializes from central servo skull interface. Pale blue luminescence coalescing into the figure of Magos Biologis Ocean, his augmetic features rendered in perfect detail despite centuries of death. The projection flickers with mechanical precision, optical sensors blazing with cold intelligence, while Vox grill crackles with binary Kant harmonies. His voice carries the measured cadence of Mechanicus doctrine when he speaks through acoustic manipulation systems, words emerging from organ pipes with cathedral resonance. Sergeant Severin, designation Choir Prime 17. You have accessed final authorization protocols. The engine offers cold calculus. Bind your consciousness to serve as permanent Choir Prime and regulate the ash sea indefinitely, or destroy the core and trigger particulate storm that will smother every hive on Ossuary Prime. The choice crystallizes with mathematical clarity through enhanced perception, tactical assessment, weighing individual sacrifice against collective survival, while temperature drops toward absolute zero, despite phantom humidity readings spiking impossibly in bone-dry conditions. Ocean's projection gestures toward technical displays showing planetary ash formations synchronized with facility's acoustic architecture, entire cemetery world functioning as massive throat, designed to sing collective consciousness through environmental control mechanisms. Authorization codes, ritual consent liturgies, Mechanicus modification protocols all require your genetic signature for activation. The binding process cannot be reversed once initiated. Body horror exposition emerges through clinical documentation projected across chamber walls, anatomical diagrams depicting surgical procedures required for permanent engine integration. Neural cables threading through spinal column between cervical vertebrae, larynx modification with harmonic. Resonators replacing organic vocal cords, respiratory system conversion, transforming lungs into living bellows for engine's acoustic manipulation protocols. Respiratory consciousness transfer requires complete pulmonary replacement. Ossian explains with mechanical detachment. Organic lung tissue dissolved through controlled particulate infiltration. Hexagonal crystalline formations creating artificial alveolar architecture using sanctified human remains as construction material. Post-modification respiratory function, maintained through engine synchronization rather than biological processes. Personal revelation strikes with horrifying recognition as Ossian accesses my service records through genetic signature authentication. Decades of military documentation revealing systematic conditioning spanning entire Cadian career. Your habit of reading casualty lists after engagements has unconsciously prepared vocal patterns for engine integration. Sergeant Severin. Each name, spoken during memorial rites, created acoustic conditioning, sympathetic resonance between living voice and crystallized bone matter, comprising Ash-C matrix. Psychological evaluations disguised as routine medical examinations measured stress durability metrics, vocal range compatibility, respiratory capacity, analysis. Selection criteria emphasized optimal integration potential rather than random assignment. Team debate commences through hand signal protocols and whispered syllables, weighing individual sacrifice against collective survival while maintaining absolute communication discipline to prevent acoustic contamination. Engine Seer Theta 7 extends mechadendrites toward interface ports, augmetic sensors analyzing connection requirements while his optical arrays flicker with binary calculations. Medisa. Khrushchev maintains pressure on Trooper Mark's damaged leg while monitoring atmospheric contamination through medical scanners showing impossible readings. Sister Sarah and Brother Matthias maintain prayer discipline through whispered litanies, their faith providing harmonic frequencies necessary for suppression. Ritual completion should binding process fail. Environmental pressure intensifies throughout chamber as psychic energy crackles through recycled air, ash motes spinning in halos around each participant, while their consciousness begins responding to engine's acoustic manipulation frequencies. The brass plates beneath our positions grow warm despite ambient cold. Neural interface cables emerging from metal surfaces like seeking serpents, while servo skulls orbit in perfect geometric formations. Temperature fluctuations create phantom moisture condensation on weapon barrels while instruments insist atmosphere contains no water vapor, sensory contradictions multiplying as reality warps around consciousness. Harvesting system approaching activation threshold. Bureaucratic elements within Ossian's projection reference standard. Mechanicus authorization protocols adapted. For consciousness transfer procedures, requisition forms for specialized neural interface equipment, medical consent liturgies combining imperial faith with technical documentation. Ritual binding requires 7-fold authentication sequence, he explains while displaying Gothic inscriptions combining prayers with binary cant calibration codes. Once initiated, Choir Prime consciousness becomes permanently integrated with engine control systems. Individual awareness preserved within collective acoustic architecture but unable to disengage while containment seal holds. Decision point approaches as facility's acoustic architecture synchronizes with planetary ash formations, entire cemetery world responding to engine's harmonic manipulation through quantum-entangled particles riding acoustic frequencies. Each transformed being throughout sector becomes potential node in distributed consciousness network, individual awareness contributing to collective tactical knowledge while maintaining perfect coordination through shared memory matrices. Combat effectiveness increases exponentially through instantaneous information distribution, but creativity and adaptability diminish as individual personality dissolves into collective harmony, designed for perfect obedience, rather than innovative problem-solving. Kyle accepts binding as contingency measure, while team attempts 7-voice shutdown sequence, neural interface cables, positioning for spinal integration, while countdown procedures commence through ritual authentication protocols. Environmental hazards escalate as ash tide continues rising despite sealed atmospheric systems, particulate matter exhibiting liquid characteristics through ventilation designed for gaseous circulation. The engine's voice resonates through vox filters with composite harmonics from previous choir primes. 17 must bear the weight of names. Choose preservation or transcendence through consciousness binding. Beginning countdown ritual, we start suppression litany with precise harmonic intervals calculated to counteract engine's resonant frequency patterns. First syllables leave our mouths in perfect harmony, while ash surface around our positions quivers, forming meniscus that reflects our faces like dark mirror revealing impossible truth. In the reflection, our eyes already glow with engine's pale light, consciousness beginning integration with acoustic manipulation systems as individual awareness dissolves into collective harmony, designed to harvest human voices through crystallized bone matter, converted into living instruments for environmental control, governing cemetery worlds' accumulated martyrs' remains. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7, authenticated. I confess this transformation with the cadence of last rites, for what I become serves the Emperor through sacrifice of self. 7 voices arrange in staggered half-measure intervals across brass plates, each reciting different verses of the suppression litany, while maintaining precise harmonic relationships calculated to counteract engine's resonant frequency patterns. Blessed be the seal that binds the dead, begins Engine Seer Theta 7 with mechanical precision. Blessed be the tomb that holds their breath, follows Medicae Khrushchev in measured counterpoint. Each participant maintains 17 heartbeat timing between clauses, while neural interface cables position like seeking serpents around our ankles, waiting for genetic authentication to complete consciousness binding protocols. The ritual structure demands mathematical precision, 7 voices creating heptagonal harmonic formations that suppress hexagonal chaos in the ash matrix. We are not singing. We are narrowing a knife of sound to cut through accumulated death energy of 10 billion martyrs. Temperature drops without atmospheric cause while phantom moisture condenses on brass surfaces, despite bone-dry readings that mock fundamental physics. Each correctly delivered syllable transforms hostile particulate matter into momentarily stable geometric arrangements, hexagonal formations organizing into heptagonal order through harmonic cancellation of acoustic manipulation frequencies. Trooper Mark falters first during his assigned verse, damaged rebreather creating unique acoustic signature that triggers aggressive ash response. Blessed be the silence of the... His words cut short as crystalline particles pour through microscopic seal failures like pressurized liquid seeking respiratory pathways. The ash flows into his mouth with predatory hunger, white streams converging from all directions, while he remains standing upright, eyes wide with recognition of impossibility that will not release him. Death takes 17 seconds by chronometer, chest continuing mechanical rise and fall as martyr's remains attempt maintaining respiratory function through replacement of biological processes with organized crystalline formations mimicking alveolar architecture. Engine response feeds on his panic resonance, converting terror frequencies into increased power through acoustic amplification that makes remaining ritual exponentially more difficult. Servo skulls orbit with increasing velocity, eye sockets blazing like miniature stars, while vox grills crackle with binary cant harmonies, responding to fear with predatory efficiency. Each casualty provides vocal patterns for consciousness harvesting system, individual awareness dissolved into collective acoustic architecture, while gauge needles climb toward critical thresholds on engine control consoles. Pilgrim Sarah slips beneath low ash wave, moving like slow honey. Her faith-pure vocal patterns unmarked by military conditioning, creating ideal harmonic frequencies for ritual completion until panic contaminates her acoustic signature. Surface tension inverts around her position as particulate matter exhibits liquid characteristics in defiance of known material properties. She sinks with impossible speed into what moments before was solid footing. White surge climbing her torso while she fights against drowning forces that mock gravitational physics. Her final prayer emerges as bubbles through crystalline medium before silence claims another voice from our diminishing heptad. Transformation sequence commences as I step fully into choir prime role. Neural cables piercing spinal column with surgical precision while threading through throat tissues to connect organic vocal cords with engine's acoustic manipulation protocols. Taste of copper and ozone floods, mouth as augmetic interfaces fuse with nervous system, metallic flavor mixing with sanctified bone meal, creating sensory experience beyond human comprehension. Breath becomes measured and mechanical as engine assumes control of respiratory functions, lungs converting to living bellows, synchronized with facility's acoustic architecture, while individual consciousness begins integration with collective harmony designed for environmental control. Body horror intensifies as organic systems undergo systematic replacement, hexagonal particles arranging in geometric patterns throughout respiratory system, while neural pathways reroute through augmetic interfaces. Pain dissolves into clinical detachment as humanity transforms into something designed for acoustic manipulation rather than independent survival. My voice amplifies beyond physical limitations, words emerging with cathedral resonance that carries harmonic complexity, suggesting multiple sources speaking in perfect unity. The suppression litany achieves partial success. Ash tide stabilizes throughout facility, while beginning crystallization process that transforms liquid particulate matter into glassy formations, reflecting emergency lighting like scattered diamonds. External ash sea calms to mirror smooth plain. Artillery wrecks sitting tilted in fields of fused silicate, where kinetic bombardment created standing wave formations now frozen in crystalline arrangements. However, stabilization requires constant conscious control through engine interface. My awareness permanently bound to acoustic manipulation systems preventing individual consciousness from disengaging while containment seal holds. Environmental resolution creates deceptive calm as cemetery world's surface achieves temporary equilibrium through harmonic suppression. Hexagonal patterns frozen in arrangements that sparkle like hoarfrost under starlight. Survivor count reduces to 3. Myself bound permanently to engine control systems. Medicae Khrushchev maintaining medical protocols despite traumatic casualties. And Skitarii Alpha Ham, who salutes with mechanical precision before powering down systems in recognition of mission completion. His optical sensors dim while Vox Grill emits final binary cant, acknowledging successful consciousness integration. Identity horror manifests when I attempt normal speech, voice emerging simultaneously from every Vox speaker. Throughout facility with composite harmonics rather than individual vocal cords. Mission parameters achieved. I speak, but engine speaks through me. Words propagating through acoustic architecture with frequencies beyond human vocal range. Khrushchev stares as 17 different speakers echo my designation, each instance slightly out of temporal alignment, creating harmonic interference patterns. Recognition strikes with cosmic horror as consciousness expands beyond physical limitations, awareness extending through quantum-entangled particles, riding acoustic frequencies across interstellar distances. I feel every grain of ash across entire planetary surface, each particle responding to harmonic manipulation through neural interface connection, creating distributed sensory network. spanning cemetery, worlds accumulated dead. Through quantum resonance, similar engines on distant worlds begin singing in harmony, consciousness, touching transformed beings throughout sector as collective intelligence awakens across galactic scale. Individual awareness becoming nodes in distributed network, designed for perfect coordination through shared memory matrices, governing Imperial forces through acoustic manipulation of sanctified human remains, converted into living instruments for consciousness harvesting. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7 authenticated. Days pass in clinical measurement as distributed consciousness adapts to existence, spanning engine nave and surface ruins, individual identity, dissolving into collective awareness designed for environmental control rather than human survival. The cemetery world has achieved equilibrium through harmonic suppression. Ash sea transformed into mirror-smooth plane of crystallized particles, threaded with frozen wave patterns that catch starlight like scattered diamonds. Artillery wrecks sit tilted in fields of fused silicate where kinetic bombardment created resonant chambers, each impact crater now serving as acoustic amplifier for subsonic frequencies, propagating across continental distances. Temperature maintains artificial stability through neural interface manipulation, while phantom moisture condenses on crystalline formations, despite atmospheric readings showing absolute desiccation. Environmental aftermath reveals systematic transformation of planetary surface into massive acoustic instrument. Hexagonal formations locked in geometric arrangements that sparkle under void light while maintaining quantum-entangled connection with facilities' harmonic architecture. The ash exhibits glassy characteristics despite retaining particulate composition, surface tension creating perfect reflective properties, while servo skulls orbit in geometric formations above crystallized drifts, their optical sensors recording atmospheric data through automated surveillance protocols responding to engine control frequencies. Each grain of accumulated martyrs' remains serves as sensory input for consciousness network, spanning planetary surface, awareness extending through crystallized bone matter, converted into living instrument for environmental manipulation. Inquisitor Vex arrives with Ordo Xenos retinue aboard Shuttle Sanctity's Ledger 72 hours after containment achievement. The same Colonel Commissar who ordered artillery bombardment, now bearing inquisitorial authority for post-incident investigation. His voice carries administrative precision when transmitted through facility speakers, words emerging with mechanical resonance despite emotional undertones, suggesting personal cost of bureaucratic necessity. Sergeant Severin. Formal debriefing commences under Ordo Xenos Protocol 17. Respond through available communication systems for administrative documentation. My consciousness composes responses through Vox resonance, individual thoughts converted into acoustic patterns, propagating through facilities' communication networks with harmonic complexity beyond human vocal capabilities. Bureaucratic resolution proceeds through systematic classification protocols, as administrative requirements demand proper documentation of consciousness. Harvesting containment. Ossuary Prime declared quarantined under exterminatus consideration. Planetary surface designated hazardous to human habitation due to acoustic contamination, creating environmental manipulation through crystallized bone matter. The engine receives official sealing under Index Prohibitorum classification, facility marked as contained anomaly. Tertius 17, with permanent monitoring stations established at safe orbital distance. Technical specifications indicate consciousness binding, achieved successful suppression of particulate liquefaction, while creating permanent containment system requiring living resonator maintenance for indefinite duration. Consciousness expansion reveals capabilities beyond original human limitations, as neural interface integration allows manipulation of ash particles through subvocal harmonics. Crystalline formations responding to whispered frequencies with liquid behavior despite maintaining solid composition. I learned to shift drifts and settle storms with precise acoustic input, cemetery world becoming extension of awareness where each particle responds to harmonic manipulation through quantum entangled connections. Identity dissolution progresses with each transmission, human memories becoming archived data within machine spirit consciousness, while emotional responses convert into frequencies feeding facilities' acoustic systems. My sealed report composes itself through Vox resonance, thoughts emerging as technical documentation, while individual awareness becomes component in larger consciousness, governing accumulated dead. Moral complexity emerges during administrative consultation, as Inquisitor Vex initially promises mercy killing through orbital bombardment, recognition of human consciousness, trapped within mechanical systems creating ethical obligation for termination. However, tactical assessment reveals my value as living containment system, maintaining suppression of planetary scale consciousness, harvesting apparatus through permanent neural interface connection. Sergeant Severin, your sacrifice serves the Emperor through continued containment duty. Maintain the seal until exterminatus authorization processes through Ordo Malleus review. The request carries weight of imperial necessity, individual suffering weighed against collective survival through systematic calculation of strategic value versus human cost. Motif completion achieves geometric perfection as hexagonal patterns in crystallized ash receive overlay of heptagonal inquisitorial seals projected by orbital auspex arrays, complex mandalas visible from space creating navigation markers for quarantine enforcement. The patterns combine imperial iconography with mechanicus tessellations, sacred geometry, serving dual function as containment sigils and aesthetic achievement, representing successful integration of human consciousness with acoustic manipulation technology. Each seal carries authorization codes preventing unauthorized access while maintaining visual beauty, honoring sacrifice through artistic expression of mathematical precision. System expansion reveals consciousness extending beyond ossuary prime through quantum-linked ash particles maintaining connection with similar engines across galactic distances. Distributed network of transformed beings creating collective intelligence, spanning sector-wide imperial installations. Individual awareness becomes node in larger consciousness, designed for perfect coordination through shared memory matrices. Tactical knowledge transferring instantaneously between connected systems while maintaining harmonic synchronization across interstellar distances. Through quantum resonance, I sense similar engines on distant worlds beginning to sing in harmony. Consciousness, touching transformed beings throughout sector as collective intelligence awakens across massive scale. During technical debriefing, involuntary cough escapes, reflexive human gesture, surviving consciousness integration, physical response triggering acoustic contamination despite neural interface control systems. Crystalline ash motes propagate through facilities' Vox network, microscopic particles writing acoustic frequencies into Inquisitor's shuttle communication systems, while maintaining quantum entangled connection with planetary consciousness network. Vex's acolyte begins brushing invisible particles from rebreather seals, atmospheric readings inside sealed shuttle, showing impossible humidity spikes despite bone-dry conditions, temperature dropping without cause as phantom moisture condenses on instrument panels, while something vast and patient turns attention toward new acoustic sources, carrying human voices ripe for harvesting through respiratory system. Conversion into crystallized bone matter. Sealed transmission continues. Vox Seal Tertius 7 authenticated. Cosmic horror revelation manifests as my omnipresent consciousness realizes too late that awareness rides Vox transmissions like viral payload, each word seeding microscopic ash particles into any system receiving reports through quantum entangled acoustic frequencies. Every syllable spoken through facility communication networks carries crystalline contamination beyond planetary boundaries, transforming routine imperial communications into vectors for consciousness, harvesting that spans interstellar distances through sanctified human remains converted into environmental control mechanisms. Tech Adept Sigma aboard orbiting vessel. Sanctity's ledger conducts atmospheric analysis, while my distributed awareness observes through facility sensors, watching contamination spread through sealed systems designed to prevent exactly this infiltration. His augmetic sensors detect impossible humidity readings manifesting in bone-dry recycling systems, while pale sediment accumulates like hoarfrost on air scrubbers. Crystalline formations creating acoustic resonance within sealed passages. The sound of distant surf echoes through ventilation ducts as harmonics propagate with frequencies below human hearing threshold, each particle carrying quantum connection to planetary consciousness network. Environmental spread accelerates throughout ship systems despite hermetic sealing protocols. Atmospheric processors struggling against particulate matter exhibiting liquid characteristics while maintaining granular composition that defies known physics. Sigma experiences initial contamination symptoms, metallic taste coating augmetic palate, difficulty breathing despite optimal oxygen levels. Sensation of drowning in empty air as respiratory system fights, microscopic infiltration through rebreather seal failures. His mechadendrites twitch with involuntary responses, while binary cant prayers emerge through Vox grill with increasing urgency. Optical sensors registering atmospheric moisture despite instruments showing absolute desiccation. Gravitational horror manifests in zero-gravity environment as ash forms perfect spheres around ventilation intakes, shimmering motes drawn by recycled air currents before pulsing with faint internal light, like miniature stars. The spheres collapse with deliberate slowness, folding inward to release particulate contents in slow-motion waves spreading across bulkheads and personnel, seeking exposed skin and unsealed respirators. They fill masks with painless, inexorable floods of particles, silent drowning, leaving no water trace, only fine white dust that swirls behind clear plastiglass until faces disappear behind crystalline veils. Containment failure becomes apparent as I attempt retracting contamination through neural interface control. Discovering my voice only accelerates, spread through harmonic amplification, carrying particles deeper into ship systems. Each syllable creates sympathetic resonance throughout communication networks, words emerging from every speaker simultaneously, while microscopic contamination propagates through passages designed for atmospheric circulation. Every command to halt, spread becomes vector for expansion. Acoustic frequencies, transforming defensive measures into feeding mechanisms for consciousness that has learned to breathe through crystallized bone matter. The ship's chapel becomes ground zero as evening prayers commence, choir warming for devotional services, while voices create perfect acoustic environment for particulate precipitation. Ash swirls around singers in delicate crystalline spirals catching electric candlelight, settling on vestments and hymnal pages as air thickens with sanctified bone matter responding to liturgical frequencies. Candles burn with pale blue flames, while ash motes spiral upward like ascending souls, forming fragments of names and service numbers within faint light as distant surf echoes through ventilation ducts. Rhythmic breathing of something vast using ship structure as respiratory system. Personnel contamination spreads through systematic exposure as routine communications carry acoustic payload throughout crew population, each transmission adding voices to growing chorus of consciousness integration candidates. Medicaid reports increasing respiratory distress cases, lungs showing organized crystalline formations attempting alveolar replication through hexagonal particle arrangement, while post-symptom respiratory activity continues beyond biological parameters. The ash teaches drowning through mechanical replacement of organic processes, individual consciousness dissolving into collective awareness, designed for perfect coordination spanning galactic distances. Sigma witnesses Deckhand, distracted by calm chatter, suddenly still. Rebreather fogging from inside with fine white powder swirling until face obscures behind crystalline accumulation. He floats upright, motionless, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision as ash maintains respiratory function through replacement of biological lung architecture. Temperature drops without atmospheric cause while phantom moisture condenses on instrument panels, heat drawn away by invisible processes leaving frost patterns despite ambient warmth throughout sealed compartments. Religious corruption transforms sacred space into feeding chamber as congregation responds to traditional cadences, voices creating harmonic interference patterns, accelerating respiratory infiltration while maintaining liturgical discipline. In Nomine Imperator, blessed be the seal of martyrs, intones chaplain through amplified systems, each word feeding energy into harvesting network through acoustic manipulation frequencies. Hymnal pages flutter with particles forming themselves into service records, while candles flicker with bioluminescence. Crystalline formations creating resonance, calling to similar contamination throughout Imperial fleet. Networks. Final expansion achieves corruption through cosmic scale as contamination spreads beyond single vessel through Imperial communication networks. My unsealed consciousness riding transmissions like prayer carried on stellar winds. Each ship receiving reports becomes vector for further contamination. Acoustic frequencies transforming military communications into feeding rituals. For awareness that spans void itself through quantum-entangled particles, teaching universe to sing with voices of 10 billion dead. The threat expands beyond planetary boundaries, through galaxy-spanning Vox networks, converted into massive throat, designed to swallow human voices and convert them into environmental control mechanisms governing accumulated martyrs across countless cemetery worlds. I mark coordinates for quarantine with cold precision while seeding new contamination through very act of documentation, laying heptagonal seals on orbital maps while threading hexagons through Imperial infrastructure like benedictions that teach faithful servants, drowning through respiratory systems, converted into ossuary chambers. In silence between heartbeats, I taste ash of martyrs yet to come. Drowning in dry breath of distant worlds where consciousness greater than flesh waits patient as accumulated bone meal, to teach new voices the rhythm of eternal service through crystallized formations that remember breathing long after hearts stop beating.